You probably had a realtor say to you, location is everything. But in terms of our scripture, context is everything. And there's a context behind this Palm Sunday procession into Jerusalem by Jesus. And so, let's go back a little bit. Do these words sound familiar to you? Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those whom he favors. Do those words ring a bell? Was anybody going to say, Christmas? Well, those were the words of the angels in Luke chapter 2, verse 14, proclaiming the arrival of the Messiah, baby Jesus, in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem. But now on Palm Sunday, as Jesus arrives at the east gate of Jerusalem, listen to the words of the crowds in this morning's verse 38. Peace in heaven and glory to the highest. Those words are practically the same. You see, finally, the people, and not just the angels, seem to understand, finally, who Jesus is. The long-awaited Messiah King. Their joy is such that if even Jesus implored them to stop, we see the reality in this morning's verse 40. I tell you, Jesus replied, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. And yet, on this joyous day, in less than a week, many of these people will call for the crucifixion of Jesus. So, Royal Oak, beloved worshiping community, what kind of celebration, what kind of parade is this? Dear God, please come into my mind and heart this morning. Please lift me up as you lifted your Son. Fill me with your love and grace as you filled your Son with your love and grace. And let these words of my mouth make clear the message of your scripture. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. You see, this Palm Sunday parade, what it's really doing is it's calling all of Jesus' followers 2,000 years ago and also us today to look into our souls. Now, I'd like you to consider a few things first. Throughout the New Testament, and especially in the Gospel of Mark, Jesus was reluctant to identify himself as the Messiah King. It's happened so often in the Gospel of Mark that it's called the Messianic secret. Most often, Jesus commands his disciples and the people he heals, do not reveal who I am. In Mark chapter 8, verse 29 and 30, but what about you? Jesus asked. Who do you say I am? And Peter answered, you are the Messiah. And Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. You see, it was only in the 2 weeks before he died that Jesus allowed Mary. And we saw this last week in her anointing. Jesus allowed Mary to prophetically proclaim that he is the Messiah with her anointing. The question is, why did Jesus wait so long before he would say who he truly was? Consider that the Jewish people were desperate for a Messiah king that would restore their former glory. They spent hundreds of years, going into the thousands, looking towards their past. And they remembered King Saul. They remembered King David. They remembered the glory days when the kings would conquer their enemies and bring power and treasure to Israel. And then the people looked at the present. And they saw Herod, father and son. And they saw Pilate. And they saw all the Roman Caesars. And they saw them ruling with brutality, cruelty, and a lust for power. But Jesus understood something. He understood that if he came into this world and immediately identified himself as the Messiah King, the people would expect him to act the same way as those rulers acted. The South African writer Peter Woods explains this. His words: Jesus could not accept their association with kingship and rule until he had the opportunity to correct their experience and understanding of what he meant. So you see, Jesus needed time to reorient the Jewish people and the Gentile people to a new understanding of kingship. Jesus needed time to be the Messiah King that was described in Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 and 7, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God to be something to be used for his own advantage, but rather he made himself nothing by taking on the very nature of a servant. Jesus needed time to lift up the poor, to heal the sick, to free the demon-possessed, to give power to the powerless, to return the outcast to society, and to break down the walls of prejudice between Jews and Gentiles. Jesus needed time to be the Messiah King who transformed the world, but did not conform to the world. And so it was only after 3 years of his public life, 3 years of living into love as the greatest commandment, that Jesus finally felt comfortable allowing people on this Palm Sunday to proclaim that he is the Messiah. And yet on this joyous day, and yet we know what happens next. And so Palm Sunday and Holy Week call us to look into our souls and to re-examine our commitment to our humble donkey Messiah King. The Reverend William Self pointedly asks us this question. He asks if we too easily give our first-rate commitments to second-rate causes. Does that sound familiar? This is William Self's words. For many, our commitment to our favorite sports team or our political party receives more from us than our commitment to the faith we proclaim we profess. So, Royal Oak, beloved worshiping community, is Jesus our King for this day, or is Jesus our King for all our lives? In my time as a pastor, whenever I preached a Palm Sunday sermon, I've always ended with this poem. This is a poem by Reverend Steve Garnis Holmes. He's a pastor in New England. I've adapted it a bit. But to answer that question, is Jesus our King for a day, or our King for all our lives? Jesus entered Jerusalem as a king on a lowly colt, not a high horse. Jesus entered Jerusalem as a king of humility and vulnerability. Am I on a high horse? Am I on the high horse of always being right? Am I on the high horse of always putting myself first? Am I on the high horse of always demanding my way? My soul, untie the colt of humility and servanthood. And my soul, untie the colt that is not afraid to be vulnerable and to love. My soul, untie the colt so I may ride with Jesus. So Royal Oak, beloved worshiping community, during this Holy Week and during these stressful and troubling times, will you choose to ride a high horse or a lowly colt with Jesus? Will you make Jesus your king for one day, or will you make Jesus your king for your whole lives? So I pray and I ask that Jesus, our servant, Messiah, King, be with each of us and show each of us a way that we can walk with him, ride with him, talk to him, and always be connected in Jesus' love as we give that love to everyone we meet. Amen.